Hey everyone, Tara Kirk here. Let me make sure we're on all the things. Looks like we're good. Hi, I'm Tara-Nicholle Kirk. I'm the founder and CEO of soultour.com. I'm the creator of the Self Mastery Method, which is just a way of operating in your inner work and in your outer world that empowers you to be your big self and do your big dreams before you die. This week, I'm talking a lot. This week, a bunch of things are happening. One is I'm very softly, quietly doing the very earliest bird registration launch for my event in October, which is called Upgrade Your Money and Your Life. I'm holding it at the iconic Claremont Club and Spa here in Berkeley, California, down the street from my house. And because a season of upgrades is always, always, always a season of plot twists. This week, I'm talking a lot with you about plot twists. I'm telling you a bunch of my own self mastery stories, a bunch of the stories of the plot twists that have comprised my life, my magical and ever more wonderful life. All right, so I want you to know to catch two principles to begin. One is that every season of upgrade is a season of plot twists. So you got to loosen your control. If you think that you are the director of the universe, if that is a delusion you ever fall under, you got to let go of that control if you want to truly have an upgrade season. All right, because and the other thing is, the other principle I want you to catch now is to trust that your wise inner being, which is that piece of the divine that is in you, speaks to you within you, that still small voice that is God in you, that piece of you always knows what you really are here for, what you really want. It always knows what your highest self really is and looks like and feels like. All right. So, whenever you're thinking thoughts that are very limiting, whenever you're explaining your limitations in a way that feels really constricting, whenever there's a plot twist in your circumstances and your reaction is like, I can't do this, I'm not up for this, right? Whenever you're spending all your time in paralysis of analysis because you're trying so mightily to plan perfect action so that nothing unwanted ever takes place in your life, just know that you can always trust, no matter how unclear you think you are in your cognitive mind about what it is that you really want. Your wise inner being always knows what you really want, your big dreams, that highest self shit. Okay. And a lot of times, as you are setting goals that may still have remnants of threads of external validation, cultural conditioning, family conditioning in them, if you find yourself not being able to accomplish those goals, or if you find yourself accomplishing them and not feeling fulfilled, you can always know that, Abraham Hicks always says, you can't really get off the path. Your wise inner being is often trying to get you to someplace higher and better than your cognitive mind will ever even set a goal to take you. Okay. All right. So I want to tell you a story, a self-mastery story today about the time I got a surprise baby. So some of y'all know me, and you know that it feels like 1,000 children, but I have 3 children. I have a 30-year-old, 29-year-old, and a 4-year-old. And I'm going to tell you about the time I got the 4-year-old, who might just be the best human they've made so far. And all the humans they've made, she ranks up there for me. All right, so let's begin at the beginning, which is, I grew up in a family I grew up in a very woman cherishing family in many ways. All right. I grew up in a family where my grandmother was very much the matriarch. My father's mother was very much the matriarch. And that matriarchy was presided over by her and her 3 sisters. And I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and she cherished her sisters, cherished her sisters. She cherished me. She made it really clear that she cherished me. And She would tell me things my whole life, even once I got to be an adult. She'd say, she called me Tara Barra. Tara Barra, you've done so well. Your life is great. You just need a little girl. As I had, my older two kids are both boys. And she loved them too. But she said, you just need a little girl. You just need a little girl. And I always secretly wanted a little girl, but my sort of marriage relationships and life, that part of my life didn't play out in a way that I thought was responsible to have more biological children at that time. All right. But I always had this little smoldering secret desire for a little girl. And my friends, as we got into our like late 30s and early 40s, some of my friends even were starting menopause, and they would be like, "Shoo, aren't you glad we are not having any more kids?" And I never said anything. I'd always just be like, because I was like, I won't say what I will never do, but I knew I had this smoldering little desire for another child, maybe more than one child, but I knew one more. And I also knew how manifesting works. I knew my own magic. I know that I have the magic. Sometimes I can make the phone ring. I can decide I want a thing and download it. And I hadn't really put any intentional thought into it. But I will say this, sometimes the things that manifest the most perfectly are the things that you hold as the desires you hold the most lightly. You just desire it purely. You have no resistance to it, and you're not trying to make it happen. Sometimes that's the stuff that literally just drops into you. And that is basically what happened with me and this child. So my grandmother transitioned back into pure positive soul spirit source God energy in, let's say, I want to say like December of 2018. By April of 2019, I was, back home living my wonderful bon vivant travel the world life. I had a full speaking slate. I was going to Montana for the Athena Pack conference. I remember my calendar because it was it was actually such a perfect calendar at the time for me, and it was such a striking sequence of events that took place. So I was going to Montana, to Bozeman for the Athena Pack conference, where I tend to hold the role of opening their sacred space for their conference. Then I had like 2 weeks, and then I was going to go speak for the first time at A Fest for Mind Valley in Portugal in the Algarve. And I'll tell you this, I'd been around the world. I had never been to Portugal at that time. We're talking spring 2019. I had always heard people say, like, when Portugal came up in conversation, people would be like, huh, you should go there. It's kind of like for you. You would really like it there. It's kind of like your vibe. And I always was like, and I just never got around to it. So Mind Valley booked me for this session to speak at A-List, actually about my book, the book that I was really heavily promoting and working with this material at the time, The Transformational Consumer. I was just beginning that transition from working exclusively in marketing and business on the transformational consumer work to, beginning Soul Tour, beginning to work with people as a spiritual strategist, metaphysician, self-mastery guide. So I had this trip booked to speak at Mind Valley, and I booked some extra time. I was going to just spend some extra time in Lisbon, spend some extra time around Lisbon to explore it and catch whatever, do a vibe check. And I never took that trip. Which, as some of you know, spoiler alert, I'm now in the process of moving to the slow process, but the process of moving to Portugal. So this was like some years in the making without me working on moving all of this time. It was just a seed that had been planted, and I had taken the natural next step to cultivate the seed, but I never took that trip because one day I was sitting on the deck at the Claremont, where we're having the upgrade event. It's the private club that I belong to here in the Bay Area. was sitting on the deck one Friday afternoon. I was drinking champagne and eating French fries, which is what I used to do on Friday afternoon. And I was having lunch with my friend Katie, who I worked with a million years ago when I ran content marketing at Trulia. And I will never forget this. I got this, Katie had just moved into my neighborhood. I'm sitting across from her and I get this phone call and I see this number come up several times. And I'm not going to bore you with the details, but the long and the short of the phone call, I was on the phone for a couple minutes. I asked a couple questions. And then I hung up and I was like, Katie, I think I have to go pick up a baby. I think I have to go get this baby. And this baby is the baby that you now know is London, my 4-year-old. I think I have to go get this baby. And at the time, London is my biological granddaughter, who I've since adopted. But at the time, I didn't know London. Now, I was in the waiting room when she was born, but I didn't see her that day. And then I had met her like twice, just because of the circumstances with my son, her father, who is developmentally disabled, has a genetic disorder, has some stuff going on, and her mother, who I did not know, and I won't, because that part is her story. I will not put her business in the streets. I don't even know her business to put in the streets. But because of the circumstances, I did not really know this baby. So I had met her twice. She was like 16 or 17 months old. I pick up the phone this day out of the blue and I'm like, all right, okay, I bet. So I hang up the phone. I'm like, Katie, I think I got to go pick up this baby. Katie says, and I love Katie for this, and that's why I'm calling her by name. Katie says, you better come by my house because I've got my kids' old car seat still in the garage. So we literally drove from the Claremont. Our homes are like a mile away. Drove a mile to her home. She literally went into her garage, got the car seat out, put it in my car. And I went and picked up a baby. This was like the day or 2 days, maybe after Easter 2019. And she has been with me 100% of every day since that day. And she will be with me 100% of every day forever, according to her. She told me last night that she is never leaving. So like, she's going to grow up and still live with me is her plan. And I'm not mad at that plan. All right. So there's so many ways I could tell you this story through the lens of or I could slice or analyze or reflect on this story through the lens of self-mastery. And in the self-mastery method that I created and teach, we really have 3 big buckets of inner work that we do. The first of them is to recalibrate your nervous system, your belief system, the way you work, the way you think, the way you understand the universe, the way you understand your place in the universe. The next step is to actualize. And that usually means since you have done the paradigm shifting work of coming out from under the lies of culture, out from under the influence of your harsh, hindering inner critic, out from under the influence of fear, scarcity, unworthiness, trauma, etc. in step 1, by the time you get to the actualized step, you have this sort of fresh, clean slate to reset vision for your life in a vivid and beautiful and powerful way. But to do that, you kind of have to do it. The actualized step is an opportunity to reset the vision for your life when your true sacred big self is running the show and you're no longer setting goals from your inner critic or small self or conditioned self place. So in order to really dive fully into setting new vision from your true sacred self, right? You have to first get to know your true sacred self. So the actualized stage of the self-mastery method is a lot about self-discovery. And we use systems like my own self-mastery archetypes, the sacred money archetype. We use the human design system. We use attachment styles. We don't really use a whole lot of Myers-Briggs and other methods, but it's very common for people who come out of a recalibration season and into an actualization season to want to go down those kinds of rabbit holes of self-discovery. All right. With any of these systems, and they all have value, some more, some less, but just know they all have value. And then the last stage of the self-mastery method is alignment, and that's when you are actually doing the work to change your life, right? So you've heard me say it before, and I'll just give a plug for it again. If you have been a person who's jumped into a lot of self-improvement type action work, time management, trying to fix your procrastination, your perfectionism, your imposter syndrome, trying to get more accountable, whatever, if you start leaping into action that is like alignment type action, you're very likely going to trigger your own struggle switch because alignment work always needs paradigm work, recalibration work, and always self-actualization work first. So that's just what's happening if you've had that experience. So I'm sitting on the deck. I get this phone call. Katie is like a freaking gamer, puts this freaking, car seat in my car. I go pick this baby up. And I spend a year in legal proceedings to get guardianship of her. And then the pandemic happens, and I spend another year adopting her. So our adoption was final, not quite, but almost a year ago. So I'll say this, through the lens of the actualization work, the self-discovery work, when I was sitting at that table and I got that phone call, I knew that this was the thing to do. There was never a second of questioning about whether it was the right thing to go pick this child up, who I did not know. And now I have vocabulary for that. Now I know that I am in the human design system, I'm a projector with splenic authority. My right way to make decisions is to feel in the moment that yes or no. And I had that. And I've always, not always, but for a long time as an adult, I've known that I have this strong sense of knowing yes or no, something is or is not the right thing for me. Now, many of you have that too. However, our culture and our families often condition us to overrule and override that, to second guess that, right? So part of the path of self-mastery is learning that if you are someone with splenic authority, if you are someone whose inner authority and inner guidance system speaks loudly like that, part of the work is creating the habit of not overruling and overriding that. So I knew it was the right thing in that moment, and I followed that, and we're all glad that I did. But I also knew it would be challenging, right? And I also knew I was up for it. I knew it wouldn't do me in. I knew it would be a radical disruption to the personal narrative I had been living. My kids had been out of the house for 10 years. So I had been living in this kind of great 3-bedroom, 3-bath house in the Bay Area, doing my own thing. Travel, I would go places for a month or two at a time. I had done so many things. I had leaned so hard into lavish self-care, wellness, in self-investment, travel, joy. I had just leaned into giving myself permission to live exactly the ways that made sense for me, which was a relatively luxurious way. And I had been doing that for 10 years. And because I had done that, I felt very nourished and ready for the call to adventure that was before me, even though I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like, right? But that's the thing about you get to be in your mid 40s or older, you may have been through some shit, right? And so there are two ways that life can go when you've been through some shit. You can kind of stay focused on the path and try hard, try with all your might. And I see this a lot right now. People trying with smart, successful people who don't feel like they're fulfilling their potential or don't feel like they're fulfilling their dreams. And what I observe is that they're trying really hard not to remake the mistakes of their past. but that has them a little bit stuck in the past, right? And what we're trying to do now is to call, what I'm trying to do and called to do in this season is call you forward, call the big self within you forward. Dare you to answer my call to the adventure of experimenting to see how delicious and how big and how fulfilling and how aligned you can let your life get. All right. So for me, as I'm going to kind of go back and forth between like sharing the self mastery method piece of this story, or the way I interpret the story and reflect on the story through the method, and the way the story played out. For me, that commitment where I was like, call to adventure, God, cosmic call to adventure, cool, bet, let's do it. The moment you commit to that kind of an adventure, usually you begin to kickstart this radical new season of healing, new season of healing, whatever needs healing. It doesn't have to be a thing you were trying to heal even consciously, right? You kickstart a new season of healing, you kickstart a new season of transformation, you kickstart a new season of radical upgrade, you kickstart a new season of alignment. And one of the very first things that happened was the relationship I had been in for a few years, we broke up. It was super clear that this relationship was not a relationship that was gonna, be in alignment with the new direction of my life. And I share that detail because so often we start doing this work. We're doing the paradigm work. We're doing the actualization work, the self-discovery work. We're reparenting ourselves. We're doing the alignment work. And the very first thing that often happens when you do alignment work, if you're doing it right, is that realities, parts of your life, relationships in your life, patterns in your life, people in your life that are inconsistent with the highest self version of you, that are inconsistent with the big dream version of your life that you're stepping into, anything that's inconsistent with it has to fall away. It has to. It cannot come with you where you're going. All right. And usually it starts to feel really frictiony first. And then either you find the courage to make a necessary ending, or the thing falls apart. The other person breaks up with you. The job, you get fired from the job, you get laid off, whatever happens. But just know it almost doesn't even matter which of those things, whether you execute the ending or whether you let the universe execute the ending. Just know that often when you begin to do your alignment work, shifts will happen in your world that feel like loss before they feel like alignment. All right, so that's one thing that happened. The second thing that happened was just, all kids. I am a big believer in children. Okay, I believe that first of all, these new kids are coming out differently. They ain't even like other humans of other times, right? These kids are coming out. They are a wonderful exemplar of human evolution. But people ask me all the time, but all children across all time in all generations really do stir up the healing, the healing that they stir up what still needs tending to within their parents. They are our gurus. They are our spiritual teachers. I don't even mean this in a like woo super kind of way. I just mean that like children, having children in your space and in your life tends to stir up whatever within you still needs healing. And in the self-mastery method, we affirm over and over and over again, I choose to see it as a treasure when I discover something new to release. I see and feel myself changing moment by moment, right? These are old school Louise Hay declarations, but they're real. And so when you've been doing that work and then something shifts in your life that stirs up, you can call it triggering, or you can just call it, surfacing for you, which you still need to tend to. You can choose to see that as, oh my gosh, what the hell is actually happening, or you can choose to see it as a treasure. So I choose to see it as a treasure. People ask me all the time, do I feel like I'm getting a do-over? Because so I have a 30-year-old, 29-year-old, and now a 4-year-old, right? So 25 years between children. Um, I feel like every day of everyone's life is a do-over, to be honest. Um, and also, yeah, I apologize to my old kids all the time. I'm like, yo, you guys got the first pancake, mom. You know, that first pancake is kind of like jacked up and stuff. Because you didn't let the grill get hot enough. You didn't let the oil get hot enough. You didn't maybe the batter hadn't sat long enough. I mean, yeah. So my old kids got the first pancake, mom. I was 16 and 17 years old when they were born. Now I'm 46. So London gets a great advantage of, first of all, I've done this before, and also 25 years of personal growth work in between, right? 25 years of coaching, therapy, meditation, prayer, journaling, reflection, all this inner growth work that I was doing because it felt good to do and it was my calling to do it. She gets the advantage of all of that. Oh, and also, by the way, and I say some of this because people are sometimes fascinated. They're like, "But aren't you tired? You're 46. Aren't you tired?" I'm like, "Yo, money I didn't have when I had my old kids. I have a house that's great. I have resources. I'm kind of like that guy Clarence Avant. Um, oh, who was it? Kimberly Marie on Facebook. You were pointing out we should all watch this show, The Black Godfather, once a year or whatever. I love the quote that this guy has. He says, "I don't even have problems. I got friends." I feel like that. 25 years on, I know I don't have problems. I got friends. I got resources. And my friends, a couple of them are human, but most of them are divine. I have access to divine resources that I did not know I had when I was 16 and 17. I've had healing of old trauma that I didn't know that was not healed, was still very unprocessed back then. When I got London, I had unprocessed trauma that having London made me aware of, and I knew what to do with it in a way that I did not know what to do with trauma when it surfaced when my old kids were younger, right? And one of the big things that London stirred up for me that I think is really has a bunch of powerful self-mastery lessons in it is the need to recalibrate out of this cult of the individual, this insidious cult of self-reliance that I believe is truly a very toxic symptom of toxic capitalism, colonialism, patriarchy, white supremacy, call it what you want to. There is a very toxic trans-lie conditioning program, thought habit that I call "I'll do it myself" syndrome. Like we've been getting credit or external validation for doing hard things by ourselves for so long that has become this very toxic, isolating, I'll do it myself syndrome. It creates a moat around you. In the self mastery method, we talk about our interpersonal relationships and the progress they can help us make, like spiritually, as our magnets and our moats. When you are still embedded in toxic, "I'll do it myself" syndrome trance, you broadcast a moat that keeps good help away from you. It keeps supportive humans away from you, right? In some ways, it becomes a broken magnet because it attracts the kind of people into your world who actually don't want to help, who do not want to participate, who might even want to take instead of give, right? So I had a series of healings, and I'm sure I'm still in them with London, because with London and with the medical diagnosis I talked about yesterday, and with the pandemic, and with childcare breaking down, and with my businesses, I basically had no other option than to heal my magnets and to heal my moats, to stop broadcasting a signal that says, help stay away, I'll do it myself. And to start not only asking for help, but to start really recalibrating what I even thought an appropriate landscape of life looked like from an interpersonal relationship perspective, right? So, like, when I first got London, I tell people, I joke, I'd probably had her for 36 hours before I felt maternal guilt flaring up, where I was like, huh, this is fascinating. I was feeling guilty. I was logically aware that I couldn't even, that guilt story couldn't even possibly be logically true because I've had this child 36 hours. I can't possibly have fucked her up yet. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I realized over time that was telling myself several things. I realized that this maternal guilt story is a very deep and insidious shadow in the collective unconscious. It was not my story it wasn't even really my story. It was a thing that was in the collective that was surfacing because I now had this baby child. And it did cause me to tell myself some scarcity stories. I would tell myself the story that, every moment I wasn't with her, every moment she was in daycare or with someone else was sort of like a moment of her lifetime that we had lost. I mean, I was really dramatic in the way I was thinking about it. And one day I read this story. I want to say it was written by Charles Blow in the New York Times, who was like a Black dude, single parent. And I don't even remember what the rest of the piece was about. I just remember him saying that his mother had taught him that the more people who love your children, the better. And that was like a big, epiphany moment for me where I was like, huh, what if that's true? What if the more people who love my child, the better? What if I could call in and attract in people who, when she's not with me, her experience of life is actually benefiting because they love her and they're able to teach her or have fun with her in ways that I can't. And so I started to really shift the lens through which I looked at other people, right? Whereas I think before I'd had so much, early life and early adulthood trauma with people that I kind of saw every relationship, every new person as like a tax. Every new person would like take a little bit away or require a little bit. Whereas this was really one of the big healings that London has been for my life, has been to start calling in and seeing all the ways in which actually, no, these new relationships that I've cultivated and new depth to existing relationships that I've cultivated because of her are wildly additive to my life. And yes, they take some investment. And yes, I do have to learn how to be good at managing the energies of the people around us and managing the people of the people around us, both in my work and the people who help me with her and the people who help me with the house and just our friends and community relationships. That takes investment. But it's an investment that pays off really well in ways that have tenderized my heart. And have just enriched our lives. So that's some of the recalibration work was really in decolonizing and recalibrating that trance of I'll do it myself, right? So that I could open my heart and open my life to other people, which turned out down the road, I realized, oh, by the way, I'm a projector. I can't even really operate in an optimal way in the world without the puzzle pieces of other humans, right? So that was a very big thing for me. So that's recalibrate. Let's talk about actualize. The actualization work has been really fascinating to do in parenting. I think a lot of people don't know, but Ra, the guy who created the traditional human design system, actually had a strong focus on parenting. He had a strong idea that most of us come here born with one unique, divine, sacred, wonderful wiring, and we are taught our whole lives to act in a different way than we are wired to act. And so he thought if parents could just foster and cultivate individual children's unique wiring, then more people would be able to operate optimally, and human evolution would benefit as a result. I happen to agree with that. So some of the fun stuff that I've done been able to do, been invited to do in the actualization realm with London has really been to like both continue to do my own self-discovery work at new depths, and also to help her understand herself. So I do a lot of teaching her about her own human design type, her own extroversion, all of her own wiring. Her wiring as a spirited child. I teach her in 4-year-old terms about her own wiring and how she can best manage it. So, for example, London's a generator in human design. But for her, I call her a powerhouse. So I'm like, babe, what are you? I'm a powerhouse. She knows to say that I'm a powerhouse, right? We need to teach our children to own their wiring and to love it, right? So she knows she's a powerhouse. She knows that I lay down with her to put her to sleep, and then I have to go back to my own room because she generates energy all night, all night, all night, all day, all night. And I am a projector. I actually need to not have that generating happening near me physically while I sleep or I don't rest. She knows that I need more rest than she does. So we do this beautiful thing where sometimes I'll be like, girl, it ain't happening. Remember, mama needs more rest than you do. And she'll go, oh, I'll give you some energy. And she comes over and puts her head on my head and gives me energy, or she'll put her heart on my heart and give me energy, which is actually how generators and projectors are meant to work. They're meant to like puzzle piece together to create in the world, right? So I do a lot of that kind of thing with her, teaching her, London is wild. She's the most extroverted extrovert to ever extrovert. She literally charges her batteries off of other people. Whereas I'm projector and I'm introvert. So I like a lot of one-on-one. So I get to teach. It's a constant co-creative process of molding the clay of like, how can I make sure, so I make sure we belong to a club. I can always take her to a place where there are lots of other people for her to charge her batteries off while I can still have a one-on-one conversation or be over here by myself. Like we do a lot of that kind of curating a world that works for us both. And it's part of the motivation or the thinking around moving as well from, where we live now in Oakland to Portugal. This process in part has been an elevation. Having London has elevated my own vision from just a beautiful life with a healed heart and great business to curating a world and a daily life for this child that is better, that will outrank any screen or anything else that she might find attractive. And the things that I have found that do that for her are horses, the ocean, and really out of the box schooling situations. And so those were some of my checklist, if you will, items for moving. I needed to be in a place where there was community, where it was truly family friendly, where it was easy to find help, because we do have a lot of help that makes this household tick. I have housekeeping weekly. I have 2 part-time nannies. I have a daycare. We belong to a private club that has a kids club. I need all of that for this to work well and for me to be able to engage with her fully. So I needed a place where it was a little bit easier to find that kind of help, quality help. And also where she could ride horses daily and surf daily, be in the ocean daily, that had lots of other schools, so those are some of the things that factored into my decision making and search for a new place. Although the truth is, we'll probably end up living in part-time in both places. Is looking like what will happen for a while. Um, and then, yeah, the last thing I'll say on the self mastery method is the alignment piece, right? And so, as I started to come into the awareness that I was really trying to make a family setup work in a geography that wasn't super family friendly, where I live now in the Bay Area, I decided I would be open to making a move and I would explore that, but I didn't want to rush it. And I didn't want to do what the 12-step people call pulling a geographic. So pulling a geographic is where you have some issues and you think that the way you're going to solve those issues is just by moving to a new place. But you know what they say, wherever you go, there you are. So I kind of was like, hey, if I'm having issues, and I was, because during COVID, childcare broke down a lot of times. I literally had to stop working and stop my business multiple times. Um, I thought, I don't want to pull a geographic. I've lived in Oakland for almost 25 years. If I can't figure out how to get help here, how do I think I'm going to do it in another place? Right? So I went about, even while I was scouting other places to live, and this is really an important principle to catch. If you're thinking there are big moves or big changes you want to make in your life, wherever you go, there you are. So we don't want to make changes by running from problems, being in the energy of the problem, hashing the problem, flogging the problem, fondling the problem, and thinking that another place or another job or another mate is going to solve that problem. What you want to do is begin calling forth solutions, begin aligning, that's the right word, begin aligning to solutions right where you are, bloom where you're planted before you even make the change. You cannot have a happy ending from a really shitty, problem riddled journey. So start aligning to the solution now. And if nothing, and hey, you may solve all the things and decide you don't even need to make a change, or you may align to solutions and realize you've created a wonderful prototype to create the next new, version of you, the new season in alignment with that prototype. So I was like, Infinite Spirit, show me the way. I got really still and quiet with myself. I have to dig deep and keep going to find better help. I had to realize that I had this underlying paradigm that was telling me a scarcity story, that every second I was away from her was a second lost of our lives. I had to work on that paradigm and that belief system. When I did that, I started to be able to set an intention. I wanted a Zen ass Mary Poppins. I didn't want a basic babysitter. I didn't want just anybody I could find off the streets. I wanted a Zen Mary Poppins who was super aligned with the way I saw the world and the way London was being raised. And I got her. Thanks, Alora. And I got her. So I got way more help that way. I upticked the amount of help I was getting at home. I decided to join, it's really a private club, but I'll call it for ease of reference, a country club that had a kids club, that had swim lessons it was a mile from my house. So I didn't have to get on wait lists 6 months out in advance to get to swim classes, right? And yes, that was a very Tara way to solve this problem, right? Need more childcare? Join a country club. But you know what? It worked because the club's childcare stayed open during the pandemic, and the club's childcare continues to be a resource to me on the weekends when I just need an hour of introvert time in the steam room. I can take her and she has a blissful time and I get that time. It's all good. And then in let's see, December, this last December, Alora, my Zen Mary Poppins, was walking into my house, and I had been doing some self-coaching on alignment. I had this book concept. I had just rewritten the Vivid Vision for Soul Tour, which I'll share with you soon. I had all these things that were coming down the pike, and I was like, what's not in alignment? And what wasn't in alignment was I had no deep, there were several things. I had no breaks from getting baby dressed, dropping off, picking up. Our weekends were very scheduled. And in part, that's because London is a powerhouse. She needs to wear herself out every day so that she can sleep at night. And so Alora walked in the door and I said, Alora, how often do you do overnight babysitting? She said, twice a month. I said, I want them for the year 2022. I want all of your overnights for the year 2022. So in December, I made what Rachel Rogers would call $1 million decision. But it was more like a spiritual $1 million decision. And I booked out every other weekend with my Zen Mary Poppins, and I check myself into the Claremont and I hole up. And sometimes I work on the book projects, sometimes I work on the upgrade event, sometimes I just have meet friends for dinner. You know what I mean? But I have that consistent, predictable time. And when I needed to make a really last minute trip to Portugal a couple months ago to do a vibe check, and I left the baby with Laura. I was only gone for 4.5 days. I got over there. I had this moment of panic and I was like, what did I do? And I texted Laura and she said, but we've worked for this. We've worked for this. And we had done this very slow, gradual, getting London used to, one night, maybe we did 2 nights. You know what I mean? We'd had this very gradual build, and the 5 days was easy. It was easy for her, easy for me. All right. So that's the recalibration, actualization, alignment way that I think about this gift of a surprise baby. And I'll tell you, the other universal law that it really affirmed for me was that divine timing is real and it is in our favor. Divine timing is real and it is in our favor. I was in Portugal was supposed to be in Portugal 3.5 years ago and didn't take that trip, maybe so that I could, maybe it was like God pressing pause so that I would get London, right? And while at first the pandemic seemed like bizarre, crazy, I mean, I was for sure in a room with a 2-year-old for 21 days by myself. It was also this wonderful gift. I'm certain that I have spent more time, sheer hours of time with London than I have spent with either of my older kids in their whole lives. We had this gift of this deep time together when I wasn't in a relationship, right? There wasn't anyone else. It was just us for these years. And that will likely change soon. But we had this really beautiful, deep time to do skin to skin contact, which we hadn't been able to do when she was born because I wasn't her birth mother. I stopped working. I was able to reinvent my business in a way that's like I do way less work and way more guiding. We had COVID together a year ago. We made it fashion. We wore tutus. We listened to ballet music. We read from the goddess books every day. We made beautiful friends in the pandemic because London is just a magnet for joy and for wonderful people. Actually, my friend Elizabeth Dialto, who y'all may know, we met in the park. Elizabeth had just moved to Oakland and London just wouldn't let her alone. She wouldn't let her alone. And Elizabeth, a total stranger at the time, had to walk us to the car because London would not let her alone. And then a week later, a mutual friend of mine and Elizabeth calls me and says, did you meet a woman named Elizabeth in the park? Elizabeth Dialto is in my house right now, and she's saying that she met this kid, London, and she's like talking about her. I think it's your London. I'm like, yeah. So we ended up being friends, and I've been on her podcast, and you'll see her on my things. It's just been incredibly healing to know what I know and to raise a child knowing what I now know. It's been an incredible reparenting experience for myself. And I do want to give credit where it's due. London is one of my friends. I took her to his restaurant when I first got her, and he said, oh, he like held her up. Oh, she's a magical baby. She is a cosmic baby. She is a magical baby. One of her first sentences to me was, open the sky, Amma. She used to call me Amma. She asked me the other day, when I die, will I become the evening star? And Yeah, I've decided I can't tattoo all all the cosmic stuff she says on my body, or I'd just be covered in tattoos. All right, guys. So that's the self mastery story of the time I got a surprise baby. Thank you for being here with me and listening to the story. Oh, I will put the link to the upgrade event where I will guide you through your process of what I think call self mastery. Yes, Yvette, some people would call self realization. I would call it highest self realization or self actualization. But what we're actualizing is your true sacred self, your big self, not the self that most of us have lived in for so long, which was really conditioned by culture and family and other people's opinions and expectations. So I will drop the link to the upgrade event in all of the things so you'll be able to find it. You should come join me. It's October 21st through 23rd in Berkeley at the Claremont Club and Spa. And you will just leave with new energy, vision, enthusiasm, and a new level of appreciation for yourself and for what the plot twists of your life are there for. All right. I will talk to you guys soon. I love you. Keep your